Have you ever met a Christian who is able to manipulate, shame, deceive, lie, and ultimately abuse you? Can someone claim they follow Christ while wounding others? What if the Christian is a parent, friend, leader, or even your partner? And now you are feeling guilty thinking about that they are a narcissist. So, our topic for this episode is, can a Christian be a narcissist? Hi, beloved. This is Doc Gilbert, and I am a Christian clinical counselor and psychologist. So, welcome to our YouTube channel. If you are new here, I know and I believe that it is not an accident that God brought you here. And welcome to our another episode, and of course, another controversial topic for today's episode. Can a narcissist be a Christian? As a counselor, as a psychologist, so for many years, I've witnessed a lot of stories among Catholic or evangelical churches about leaders or people or friends or even partners that are actually exhibiting the traits and characteristics of a narcissist. And of course, these people who became their victims, who are survivors of narcissistic relationships, have experienced a lot of mental, emotional, and even relational issues. So actually, I remember a narcissistic partner that this person has been lying for many years with the spouse, that this person has been engaging with sex, with prostitution for the past many years, and even after that revelation, this so-called partner tried to communicate, gaslight, manipulate the partner of thinking that he or she has changed. I'm changing, the pronouns here, for the sake of confidentiality. So, but later it was found out that the affair, with the current affair, has been going on. And, there is another case where this daughter has actually a narcissistic mother, and this mother has been constantly guilt tripping her for not giving enough money, for not giving and providing care, or for not doing enough for the family. And therefore, this daughter has been experiencing a lot of anxiety, guilt, and even anger towards herself, thinking that she is not doing enough, that she is not enough. And it actually led to a development of masochistic personality. So this is a kind of personality where a person tends to neglect his or her own needs for the sake of meeting the needs of others, and this usually leads to burnout, to mental health issues, to toxic relationships, to toxic coping mechanisms that actually leads to harm, in the overall being of a person. And this kind of personality, this masochistic personality, is actually very present here in the Philippines. This is one of the thematic personality among Filipinos, and of course, there's a lot of factors there, but I can think of the uh, generational trauma that was passed on to us due to the uh, effects of war, of other countries conquering us, being the one to lead the country for a certain number of years. That's one of the factors, of course, the transgenerational trauma that is being passed on from one abusive parent to another, one narcissistic parent to another. So, yes, that's one of the reasons why that the Filipino personality is actually masochism. And, I can discuss more about that. But another example is this narcissistic father who is trying to manipulate, threaten her daughter that he will not attend her wedding if his demands are not met. So can you imagine the control, the disrespect, the abuse that was going on in this kind of dynamic? And of course, this daughter was afraid to lose the approval, from her own biological father. So, and then there is this narcissistic friend who used this confessed sin of my client uh, to defame this person, to spread rumors and gossip, and ultimately to shame and attack the identity of this person. Of course, if other people would know, it would bring shame, it would bring guilt, ultimately it's shame, and this person, we've been dealing with the shame that was one of the impact of this so-called gossiping. So in reality, narcissism is an epidemic here in the Philippines. This is one of the most common form of abuses. This is the most ignored, denied, dismissed, minimized in our Filipino system today. And even when we look at the system, the rules and regulations, the laws regarding the narcissistic relationship and abuse, we cannot see anything. We can only see the certain form of abuse, such as psychological abuse, physical abuse, sexual and physical, emotional abuse. But in reality, the psychological, mental, emotional abuses do not receive a justice, do not receive the proper and fair, consequences from these people who are perpetuating this. And that's a sad reality that we can see here in the Philippines. It has less consequence but more harm among victims. And just like how neglect is not much dealt with here in the Philippines unless it's sexual abuse or physical abuse. And of course, do not get me wrong, I'm not saying that this kind of abuses are not worthy to receive the justice that it necessary, to be received. But I'm talking about the reality that there is not much system, consequence, justice for the specific harm and trauma that narcissistic people have done to a lot of people, in terms of narcissistic abuse, And many times I heard people, when it's only a psychological abuse, verbal or emotional abuse, none, as far as I remember, have received, imprisonment or like consequence. So it's really an epidemic here in the Philippines. And, I'm starting to rally that, bring information about that. That's why I'm trying to discuss this in previous episodes, and yes, trauma is one of the natural reactions and impact of the narcissistic relationship and abuse. And I've heard that many times among the victims of narcissistic people, how their safety is shattered, how they've lost trust in a good world, in a good God, or in a relationship that connection and safety and security is possible. And of course, it triggers deeper trauma, just like what I've discussed in previous episodes, the familial trauma, the father wound, the mother wound, the relationships that are toxic within family dynamics. And many times it distort reality. It actually enables shame messages that makes this person believes that I must be wrong, I must not be good enough, I must be bad, I'm selfish. All this internal talk of sabotaging oneself. And that's what gaslighting is doing, to those people who are receiving that. Gaslighting is distorting the reality and making you believe that what you feel, what you experience, what you think about the relationship, the experience, and yourself isn't true, and you are the bad person. And of course, I've witnessed how a lot of mental issues are escalating, like depression, anxiety, and even suicidal ideation it always increases, being with these specific people, and ultimately it distorts one's view about God and the Bible. Many from these Christians believe that, okay, they must just be compassionate, they just must be gracious, I must forgive, I must restore, I must pray harder, thinking about that it's all about not being a good Christian. And in that process, I needed to debunk and help these people find the reality and see the truth of what's going on. And naming and calling out those abuses, naming and labeling those toxic traits and behaviors that these people are manifesting, for these victims of narcissism. So what does it looks like when we look at the Bible, or what we call the biblical narcissist, no? I'm gonna share with you some verses so we can see in the Bible that narcissist people are lovers of self, proud and arrogant. So let me quote 2 Timothy chapter 3 verses 1 to 5. So I may read it to you. But mark this, there will be terrible times in the last days. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of the good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. Rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power, have nothing to do with such people. So, okay, this is very specific descriptions of a biblical narcissist. So here, it was really reiterated, specified. These behaviors were actually specified here, that we can see, the theme of arrogance, proud, this pride, this, loving of oneself alone, but being harming and abusive towards others. Second, these biblical narcissists are actually have haughty eyes and a lying tongue. So these people used to lie, to get their power, their control, their manipulation, to other people. So let me read Proverbs chapter 6, verses 16 to 19. There are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that are quick to rush into evil, a false witness who pours out lies, and a person who stirs up conflict in the community. So we can see here that these people, their motivation are evil. They plan and scheme how to deceive people, how to manipulate others, and how they uses their tongue to create division among community, to use gossip, to use lying, just to push through their agenda. So that is very clear here in Proverbs. And third, biblical narcissists actually seek praise from people instead of God. So I may quote John 12:43, for they loved human praise more than praise from God. Of course, because this kind of people, they seek admiration and approval from many, because that's how they get their worth, their value, their sense of identity, and a sense of self. So imagine a balloon, and when you prick a balloon, it bursts out, and you cannot get anything because it contains oxygen, air, which is, we cannot see in our visible eyes. So basically, it does not have anything solid from the inside. So the same is true with narcissistic people. They have nothing solid from the inside, and they try to fill up this void, by getting a lot of praises, admirations, approval from others, through their successes, their, perfect family, perfect self, perfect finances, etc., etc. And another thing, they have hardness of heart and they are actually unrepentant. So in Romans 2:5, I may quote, "But because of your stubbornness and your unrepentant heart, you are storing up wrath against yourself for the day of God's wrath, when his righteous judgment will be revealed." So these people, due to their lack of self-awareness and most importantly, unwillingness to, check their behavior, be accountable, look on their harmful behaviors and how it is affecting other people, their hearts have been hardened, and they chose these behaviors. Yes, they may lack self-awareness, but it doesn't, exempt them from accountability, from the reality that they also have their own will. They have their own choices. And then, of course, biblical narcissists are actually false teachers who feed themselves. In Jude chapter 1, verses 12 to 13, I may quote, "These people are blemishes at your love feast, eating with you without the slightest qualm, shepherds who feed only themselves. They are clouds without rain, blown along with the wind, autumn trees without fruit and uprooted, twice dead. They are wild waves of the sea, foaming up their shame, wandering stars for whom blackest darkness has been reserved forever." So here, they just feed their arrogance, their pride, they feed their shame, by putting others down, attacking their identity, making themselves escalate as the perfect one, the ideal one. And but when we look at their souls, it actually is filled with darkness. It is filled with shame, with sin, and they try to, fill it up with external achievements, with successes, with the approval of others. So, and then they feed only themselves because they don't have empathy. They don't want to connect and even try to understand and validate others. So thus, they only think of themselves, their own needs. And they, most of the times, as I hear it in counseling, they use other people to supply their needs, to get their needs. They become dependent, they manipulate, they use all these maneuvers in order to fill up their needs and leaving others burn out, tired, and have a lot of unmet needs and losses. So they only think about themselves. They are selfish people. And of course, I know I've read this to one of our episodes. They are whitewashed tombs, meaning outwardly religious but inwardly corrupt. Okay? So, in Matthew 23, verse 27 to 28, it says here, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness." So, because they use masks to pretend that they are good, perfect, and that's been their defense mechanism in order to survive, in order not to be shamed, to be attacked, they usually use this mask to portray that they are good. They make themselves superior and put down others to make them inferior, to make them nothing, by shaming them, by using their vulnerabilities in order to elevate their images. But, from the inside, they are wicked. Not only, they think of themselves, they want to manipulate, want to gaslight, want to abuse others. So they are really whitewashed tombs. And sadly, these people are actually present among churches today. And of course, they are wolves in sheep clothing. So in Matthew 7:15, it says here, Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. So, yes, they pretend that they are good, but they gossip, they manipulate, they use, they abuse, they attack, they are lying. All these traits that I've discussed about narcissistic people, that's their behaviors. And, I just think of, talking about their salvation. I think it's, we no one can say if they are really saved or not. Only God can do. But the point here is, letting these behaviors, come to your awareness that these people, even though they are Christians, are actually dangerous, harmful, and toxic people, and many from them are actually abusive. And we need to really protect ourselves, and we need to be discerning of who are the people that we are going to let into our lives. So, how these Christian narcissists show up in church today? Okay, so one, they only serve in ministry or roles that are actually visible, that has admiration, and ultimately has power. Okay, and again, when we look at the characteristics of a narcissist, they want to get admiration, affirmation from others, because that's their way to prove their worth, to fill up their void and their needs, and that's also how they gain, their worth as a person by being in power, being in position. And also they use spiritual language to elevate themselves, that God chose me, I'm the chosen one, I'm the only one who sees the truth, I'm the perfect, I understand all things, and they do not consider others' truth, do not listen to learn from others, to hear their insights, consider their voices. And most of the time they mask abusive behavior with actually biblical vocabularies. They say, you need to honor me because I'm the leader, you need to submit to the leadership, do not touch the Lord's anointed. Although many do not use the exact words, but they use scriptures to guilt trip you for feeling anger, or even saying no to boundary. They do not take no, and for them they use guilt tripping, when you say no, because you don't have the right to say no for them, knowing that you must always say yes because they are good, and this is their worth as a person. And that's how they see that. Most of the time they also dominate conversations, testimonies among small groups, or even one-on-one conversation. So when you share your story, your feelings, there is an immediate turnaround of story, sharing their own experiences, making them look good, making them show you that they've done that, I've already done that, and this is how you should do it. And many times, they dismiss your feelings. They do not have empathy. They cannot validate. And they oftentimes, use rationality, logic just to prove their point, and, using this opportunity to turn the story about themselves. And oftentimes, and I've seen it in churches, through counseling and even through my own experience, they create alliances and division, rather than talk about, the issue with the specific person. They triangulate, meaning they share it to another person that is not involved, and then all we know is, the gossip has spread, and there is defamation, there is shame for that specific person. And of course, these people cannot handle accountability. When they are confronted with their wrong behavior, they retaliate, they attack your identity, they shift blame, they deflect, they really make you feel guilty, and make you feel that it's your fault, and that they justify their actions with their reasoning. They cannot take correction, they cannot say apology, or maybe they can do that but just, for the sake of doing that, but not really have this authentic self, doing that. And of course, they are actually, want to appear extremely religious, but they lack the fruit of the Spirit, such as compassion, kindness, generosity, patience. They use anger to manipulate and attack and get their way. And actually, for Christian narcissists, they weaponize forgiveness. That you must forgive me because that's what the Bible says. And if you don't, it's your problem. It's a you problem. And then you're gonna feel guilty. You're gonna be shamed, and one thing or another, you're gonna embrace that you must be wrong. There must be something wrong with you. So, how to deal with a Christian narcissist? Okay, so I know I've discussed it from the past episode, but set firm boundaries. So, I like what Dr. Ramini taught through one of her episodes. So, she thought about the deep technique. I'm gonna put it here. So, do not defend, do not engage, do not explain, do not personalize. And using that technique would protect your mental health, would protect you from further attacks of the narcissist, would actually solidify your boundary, because in reality, there's not much logic that you can use in explaining yourself to the narcissist. And of course, they're gonna use also your feelings, your vulnerability against you. And furthermore, you will be gaslighted. You would experience verbal shaming, attacks, guilt tripping. So it's not worth it. And for many people, I needed to teach them that they can grieve this sense of loss. That these people would totally understand them, and that would not happen anymore. So set firm boundaries, and then of course, do not argue in relation with that, because your safety, your mental, emotional safety is your priority. And it's also very important to know your safe people against enablers. These narcissistic people, they find their what we call flying monkeys. So these are the enablers, who support, who actually condone, who do not see, who are blindsided by the narcissistic behaviors. And of course, because these people were actually manipulated by the narcissist. So know your safe people against those who are enablers. So how do you know those who are enablers? So these are people who are close with the narcissist, and when even though the behavior is clear, they justify, they give good reason. For example, for a narcissist, a Christian narcissist, he or she only hopes for the good. God has given you this leader because he is gonna disciple you, he's gonna guide you. He's been too long in this journey, and he or she knows what you're doing. So they rationalize the toxic behavior of this narcissist. Okay? And of course, you must remember this technique, it is personal versus it is not personal. So in the section of it is personal, of course, it's normal to feel angry, to be hurt, to be sad, to be disappointed with the Christian narcissist behavior, especially if this person is close to you. So it's very important that you process your negative emotions, acknowledge it, sit with it, share it with your therapist or a safe friend. So you have to acknowledge and feel that, but it's not enough. You have to remember it is not personal. So meaning whatever this person is doing to you, this Christian narcissist, it's not about you. These toxic behaviors are coming from his or her own wicked, evil schemes, her sinful, toxic, abusive behavior. And that's what defines this person's state, psychologically, his or her whole being. So it's not about you. Okay? And also, remember the gray rock versus yellow rock method. So for some reasons, for example, you are working in a job that you cannot quit yet, or you are living with a Christian narcissist in your family and you cannot separate yourself first. So you can use yellow rock method, meaning you can just have casual, usual conversation. And if the narcissist try to provoke you, trigger you, remember the deep technique and then yellow rock method. You can just have this formal and professional conversation. And then for some, you need to do the gray rock method, meaning you will not say anything, express anything at all. So when you relate with this person, if you are not needed to connect or communicate, for example, in a family setting or in a church setting, so you can just dismiss, ignore, not. So in gray rock method, you're not gonna share your feelings, you're not gonna react, you're not gonna show your verbal or facial expression. So it's nothing. It's like being a rock, without feelings and thoughts and expression. Okay. So yeah, and ultimately, I hope that you'll find your healthier community. You practice your self-care, grieve the losses, and even process it in your own counseling and therapy. So, beloved, this manipulation, this attack, this lying, this abuse is not Jesus' heart for you. Jesus' heart for you is wholeness, healing, freedom, safety, security, a place where you can grow and foster and know God in a safe environment. And, in reality, I'm not gonna go far here in the Philippines. Here in Christian evangelical community here in the Philippines, there are a lot of people experiencing the abuse, the toxicity of a narcissistic Christian. So it's very important for you, if you watch this, that you find processing and counseling and therapy. Here in Intimacy Philippines, we have professional counselors and psychologists that can help you heal from this trauma, from this wound that you experience from narcissistic people. And know that you can find healing and you are not alone. So that's it. If you need counselors, therapy, psychologists, please go to our page, Intimacy Philippines. You can check it here in the description below. And yeah, this is it. Thank you for watching. And if you've learned something, reflections, insight, awareness, please comment down below. And if you have topics that you want me to discuss, please let me know, and you may email or comment down below. And if you think someone needs to hear this, please do share it to someone. And if you are new here, welcome to our channel. And please do subscribe here in the channel. And, by subscribing, you're actually helping the Ministry of Healing of Intimacy Philippines, to spread more healing to a lot of people. Okay? So, that's it. Hope to see you in our next episode. Hanggang sa muli.